That's what you were saying, Ren, that its last use was as an ice cream parlor,
Yeah,
but you know,
that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Dan,
and on Sunday nights, a lot of times on the ferry, cars would be lined up to 33, waiting for the next ferry. And Sunday night, all those stores were open, and there was a big controversy about having stores open on Sunday nights, and kids stores closed on
blue
Sunday.
laws, right.
Yeah.
But they sold to him, and he sold Mr. Bergman's whole ice cream.
You betcha.
The next house where Kirk and Linda lived, family, well, only two of them, man and the wife, they didn't have any children, Mr. and Mrs. Price. He was a purser on the ferry. He worked also on the ferry. The next house where, I don't know that couple's name, lives next to them.
It's where Jeff and I used to live.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Prettyman's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prettyman's house, Mrs. Prettyman owns it, but I don't know. He was the, Mr. Harris was his name, and he worked on the, he didn't work on the ferry, he was a lighthouse keeper.
Where?
Bloody Point.
We had a lighthouse here, the town had.
Oh, Bloody Point.
Oh, I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tillman's Island.
Sure.
Yeah, as such.
And what was his last name?
Harris,
Harris.
H-A-R-R-I-S, Harris.
So he must have had a boat here in Claiborne that took him out to the,
I guess he did.
out to the light, unless the ferry dropped him off, which I doubt seriously.
I doubt it,
Yeah.
yeah.
The old
that-
Swedish lighthouse keepers,
Huh?
there were people, lighthouse keepers in 1918 when the Coast Guard was found, had the job as long as they stayed alive and didn't retire. And they were, we used to call them wikis.
Call him what?
Wikis,
Wiki.
lighthouse keepers.
Oh.
Like the wind.
Yeah, that's Wikipedia, right? Was that lighthouse one that people would stay in for like long periods and
Yeah.
live there?
Yeah.
So he didn't have to go back and forth every day, right?
No, you had to,
Well, I don't know the arrangement, I think they stayed there for a long
That's what I
time.
thought,
Came
yeah.
back home,
Stayed there.
and I assumed somebody came and relieved him while he came back home for a couple of days or something. I
Yeah.
don't know that.
So it wasn't an everyday commute for him?
No, it wasn't, no.
However he got
No,
there,
it
yeah.
wasn't every day. They had, and next to them, the people named Hadaway owned that house, Mr. and Mrs. Clarence Hadaway. And he was a waterman, he didn't work on the ferry. Everybody in Claiborne called him Uncle Clarence and Aunt Tom. I don't know what her real name was, but he called him
Aunt Tom?
Aunt Tom.
There's a story there we're not hearing, right?
We're not gonna get here.
And they moved from, my father was born in Nevis, so when he moved up, they were also originally from Nevis. And their son was a policeman for the Baltimore City Police Department for years, and they moved back here when he retired. I don't know if you remember Mrs., what's her name?
Miss Lillian?
Huh? Hadaway.
Miss Lillian had.
Miss Lillian, couldn't think of her name, yeah. And shortly after they retired here, her husband died, so she stayed here.
She died recently, right?
Yeah, right.
Within the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, maybe less than that, maybe the last 3.
Okay.
Yeah. And she lived it well until her 90s. And as I mentioned, her husband was actually, I'm sorry, it was with the state police, was
Yeah,
not with
State trooper.
state trooper in Baltimore County, I think, because they lived in Towson, so I assumed that they lived in Baltimore County. And the next house is where Dottie owns, coming up, and that's where my school teacher and Sunday school teacher was, Mrs. Smith. And she was, her father, her husband was also a captain, a ferry boat captain, but not with this ferry. He was the story is he was retired from some other, maybe been Love Point ferry, I don't know which ferry it was, but one of those is and then the house that Gene and I lived, and that house was built in 1925, which was 2 years before I was born. I had an older brother which died with spinal meningitis when he was 13 years old. Yeah, I was 9, that's right, 4 years Abington.
Jim.
They told you that story was originally the ticket agent. And then the next house where Ralph and them lived, fellow named Harrington, what was his last name? Smith, who was a nephew of the former governor of Maryland, and he worked on the ferry. He was a purser on the ferry and such. The house there in the corner is people, family named Kerpers live there. And he also works on the ferry. I think he was on night watchman or something like that. I think just was the house back of them where Booth lived. The Booth. A single man lived there who was a top deckhand on the ferry. Clarence McQuay was his name, as such, who just recently died, actually. Not that they only have, but he became very, very ill and had to go to a nursing home. And I'll detour a little bit. The next house, as you come back on Main Street, and there,
One that Ed Harrison lives in?
yeah,
That's right.
their grandparents lived there. So, Harris, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. It was originally his grandparents there lived there, and they originally lived down what we call the Grove, that house back of Beaver, at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and that's the last house in Claiborne when I was a kid.
Okay, yeah, everything else beyond that looks a lot more modern, the ranchers and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
What about Bayside Drive where it is?
Huh?
What about on the other side of the railroad tracks, were there houses there?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where Crenshaw is?
Where,
Well, beyond Bose, right? You had gotten to Bose and then came back to the mainland then.
yeah, right.
Right.
Mr. Birch and East lived in the house, which has just been sold to people who live in Claiborne.
Right, and where Happy's house is?
Hmm?
Where Happy's house was?
Yeah.
Or is?
Yeah, we're happy to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
He was also one of the captains of the ferry boat. The house coming this way next to them, people named Sinclair owned it. And he was, I don't know what his position on the ferry was, but he also worked on the ferry.
That was Tim Frock's house.
Frock's house.
Oh, okay, now what about Crenshaw's, or where Crenshaw's was? I mean,
Crenshaw's was a sort of a stick-built nannycote, much like Carl's house. And it wasn't a nannycote, but I don't know when it was built, but it wasn't.
Who's that? Which house is that?
Past Lowry's.
To the left, yeah, if you go past Gilbert, what was Gilbert Lowry's and straight down.
Between Happy's and...
Where Will Murdoch is building the new house.
Oh, okay.
Was that wasn't there when you?
No.
Yeah.
okay.
What about Mrs. Mitchell's house?
That was who?
Betty Mitchell's house, the house, that the
Oh,
Scots-
Betty Mitchell's house is where,
The Scots? Is that the Scots or
no,
the
Betty
Sayers?
Mitchell's house is where, they just,
Phil and Sarah?
They're building a new
Blue
house.
house?
yeah,
The
right,
Scots
yeah,
house was Betty Mitchell's house.
Oh, okay.
yeah, that, you're right on the border there, right?